Good morning, hello and welcome to Medjugorje LGBT Ministry. Michael here, and today I want to give a little talk on the whole notion of intrinsically disordered. Intrinsically disordered is a word that's often used in context of gay people. It's in the catechism. It's often something that has been misquoted, misrepresented, and used by a lot of people to drive gay people away, and at times gay people feel that the catechism says that they are just intrinsically disordered, in other words, intrinsically useless, hopeless, and that there's absolutely no hope for them. Which, of course, is a total lie, and we know where lies come from. They come from the father of all lies, old hairy legs himself, Satan, or whatever other names people have for him. So today I want to debunk some of the nonsense, some of the myths, some of the lies that come with this intrinsically disordered thing that has been used at times to weaponize and to harass and to bully gay people and to basically steal the joy of knowing Jesus from them. So, where does it come from? It comes from the catechism. Now, you'll be interested to know that before the catechism goes on to intrinsically disordered in the context of gay people, which for anyone who's a catechism nerd, it's in paragraph 2357 is where it's talking about homosexuality. However, before all that, there's another teaching in the Catechism that mentions intrinsically disordered, gravely disordered, and actually it refers to everybody, not just gay people. I'll repeat that, it refers to everybody, and it's the Catholic teaching on masturbation. And actually, it's even more severe than what it says later about gay people. It says, and I just want to quote it, so just let me get the full thing. The deliberate use of the sexual relationship, both the magisterium of the Church, in the course of a constant tradition, and the moral sense of the faithful, have been in no doubt, and have firmly maintained, that masturbation is an intrinsically and gravely disordered action. Now, masturbation being an intrinsically and gravely disordered action. And guess what? It's not just gay people that might struggle with masturbation. In fact, the majority of straight people that I meet like to play around, as we will say. And yet, I don't meet straight people thinking that they're going to go to hell because of masturbating a couple of times. I don't meet straight people going around saying, oh, I'm intrinsically disordered and there's no hope for me. And yet, when it comes to gay people, how come it has been weaponized and used? And further, it mentions, in context of the masturbation thing, it says to form an equitable judgment about the subject's moral responsibility and to guide pastoral action, in other words, to know how serious or not it is in a given situation, one must take into account the effect of immaturity, force of acquired habit, conditions of anxiety or other psychological or social factors that lessen, if even not reduce to a minimum, moral culpability. In other words, what they're saying is, depending on a person, depending on a context, for example, if someone comes from a very broken family in today's society where pornography is everywhere, apps are everywhere, temptation is everywhere, people have these temptations, people have these urges, and depending on it all, even though it is gravely intrinsically disordered or whatever, the person's responsibility is very, very small, and putting it bluntly, it would be a venial sin and barely a sin at all, is basically what the Catechism is saying. Yet I've been to conferences given by famous at times priests. I remember one priest, for example, in Ireland that went to a conference in Maynooth. It was a famous exorcist priest called Father Bing, and he was giving a very good conference on demons and that sort of stuff. He's an exorcist, and yet everything was mortal sin, masturbation mortal sin, this mortal sin, that mortal sin. And that isn't even the teaching of the Church. The Church teaches that for something to be a mortal sin, it has to be gravely disordered. However, there has to be full consent and full will. And quoting again the Catechism, to form an equitable judgment about the moral responsibility, in other words, how serious a sin it is, and to guide pastoral action, in other words, to guide a priest giving a talk or in confession, one must take into account the effect of immaturity. In other words, if a person was very young, only 14 or 15 or something like that, they're not very mature, it's not as easy for them maybe to govern their sexuality. Force of acquired habit, again, if someone has got a habit of doing that for a lot of years, nobody has taught them or whatever, afterwards it's hard to break a habit. Conditions of anxiety or other psychological or social factors. Many people who suffer from anxiety, depression, often act out in different ways, sexually or other, and we have to take that into account as well. And these things can lessen, so totally reduce, or even reduce to a minimum, moral culpability. So in other words, God is merciful, God gets the bigger picture, and one shouldn't focus on it. And so when we come along then in another paragraph, a couple of paragraphs later, about gay people, it mentions again homosexuality is referring to men or women who experience an exclusive or predominant sexual attraction towards the same sex. Again, it does not say that homosexuality is intrinsically disordered. In fact, if you read down, it goes homosexual acts are intrinsically disordered. And yet what is intrinsically disordered is how people have misinterpreted this, misquoted this, and basically blame gay people for being gay, pretty much told gay people that you chose to be gay, it's a mortal sin, it's intrinsically disordered and you're going to go to hell, when actually it's not the case at all. And these gay people, if they knew their catechism, they should say, well, go back to paragraph 2352 there, because I'm sure you've masturbated a couple of times, and I don't see you too worried about going to hell. So give me a break, So unfortunately, so many Catholics don't understand this. And as a result, so many Catholics put such an emphasis on sexual sin. And the same thing, depending on the social factors, the psychological factors, all the rest that gay people or whatever might be struggling through, yes, they might be doing sexual acts, but is it a mortal sin? Is it the end of the world? Depending on all these factors, obviously not. Jesus sees the big picture. God is a God of mercy. God is a God of love. He's not some sort of a grammar Nazi. He's not some sort of a sniffer dog at the airport trying to sniff out a bit of sex and try to lock you up. No, he's a God of love. He's a God of mercy. But sadly, and very, very sadly, so many times in Catholic environments, God is made out to be some sort of prudent or prurient God that's afraid of sex, that's afraid of this, that's afraid of that, and they can't handle it. And no, God is not like a controlling mother. God is not like a grandmother that grew up in a traditional Irish family or traditional someone's family. No, God understands everything. He can handle it. He knows it. He loves us and he wants us. And so what I would say then, what is intrinsically disordered? Intrinsically disordered is bullying people. Intrinsically disordered is discriminating against people. Intrinsically disordered is using religious terminology to keep people away from Jesus, over-focusing on things that people are struggling with, humiliating people, shaming people, keeping people away from Jesus, keeping people away from the church. That is intrinsically disordered, and that is the Pharisee type of a spirit that was all over the Bible. When Jesus reached out to tax collectors and sinners, he got that all the time. What is he doing hanging around with these people? It's the same with gay people. What are you doing hanging around with them? Because if Jesus was alive today, Jesus would be hanging around with us as gay people. Jesus would be healing our wounds. He would be walking with us. He would be understanding us. Also, another thing to realize when we're talking about gay people and the intrinsically disordered thing is the Catechism says nowhere that gay people must be single people. The Catechism says nowhere that gay people can be changed and that homosexuality is some sort of a wound that can be exorcised away, or how people can get healing ministry to become straight people. The Catechism does not say that. And I have the Catechism right here in front of me, and yet the amount of Catholic people that quote the Catechism at me and haven't got a clue is intrinsically disordered. These people need to go and study the Catechism. These people need to go back to basics. So the Catechism does say the gay people are gradually called to a life of holiness, which includes chastity. And again, I will emphasize the thing gradually. It doesn't say that they have to change overnight. The Church understands that these type of virtues take long time. Also, the Church does not say which or whether, in terms of gay people, whether everyone is born straight or whether some people are gay, some people are straight. For me, I'm convinced, utterly convinced, that I am gay. Jesus made me same-sex attracted. I know this from my personal experience. I know this also from private revelations that I had from Jesus, I've had from Our Lady, that have helped me accept myself. You don't have to believe those private revelations. You can think I'm nuts if you like, but I believe them, and you're free to believe them or not. But having said that, that is not against church teaching. The church's teaching is basically around the whole area of the homosexual acts and the call over time, gradually and progressively, to holiness and wholeness. And so I think it's time for people to read the Catechism, to read it in its wholeness, and to also read the sections when intrinsically disordered, gravely disordered, are written in terms of straight people as well. And for straight people out there who are bullying gay people, who are mocking gay people, who are forcing gay people into lives that God doesn't want for them at all, that are obsessed about sexual sins, you guys, you need to go back and read the catechism, because you are bullying people, you are damaging people, you are harming the church, you're excluding people. You are doing, actually, and you're sinning against the next paragraph in the catechism, because it says the number of people who have deep-seated homosexual tendencies is not negligible. In other words, there are lots of them. They do not choose their homosexual condition. For most of them, it is a trial. They must be accepted with respect, compassion, and sensitivity. Every sign of unjust discrimination in their regard should be avoided. These persons are called to fulfill God's will in their lives, and if they are Christians, to unite the sacrifice with the Lord's cross, the difficulties that they may encounter from their condition. It does not say that these people are doomed to live a single life at the back of the church, not receiving Holy Communion, living in perpetual anxiety and struggling all their lives with depression. No, it does not. It says that they are called by Jesus, and that we are called by Jesus to live lives fully alive and fully in love with Jesus. And straight people out there, you guys are called to helping us. And you guys, if you have been bullying gay people, if you have been making life hard for gay people, you're called as well, not only to confessing this, but to changing your ways. When we go to confession and we make an act of contrition, we say, I'm sorry for my sins, and I will take the firm resolution to amend my ways and not sin again. Amen. So we can't just confess sins and then go back out and make no effort and do all the same sins. So I'm calling out to the straight people out there, and the people out there that are bullying gay people, harassing gay people, over-focusing on sexual stuff, sexual sins, or whatever they think is going on, to have a heart of mercy, to have a heart of compassion, to have a heart of love, and if they haven't read the catechism, to go and read it, and to stop quoting things, misquoting things, because that is intrinsically disordered. So that's all from the Medjugorje LGBT ministry today. Please, if there's one thing you take away from today, is read your catechism, read the paragraphs especially relating to intrinsically disordered, the one on masturbation, which refers to all people, 2352, and afterwards the sections on homosexuality, which are from 2357 to 2359. And so I would say, all gay people out there, all straight people out there, regardless of your sins, regardless of our struggles, we are God's children. We are intrinsically loved by God. We are intrinsically wanted by God. We are intrinsically known by God. We are intrinsically cherished by God. We are intrinsically adored by Him and absorbed into His love, and He wants to be with us, He wants to share with us, and He wants to bring us to the fullness of joy, the fullness of love here on earth, and to be with Him also afterwards in eternity. So from this LGBT Medjugorje ministry, have a great day and know that you are intrinsically loved by Jesus.